this is where I believe the public disdain for CIA comes from. CIA recruits us. Another one of the lessons they tell us is that they recruit us for something known as moral flexibility.
That just sounds horrible.
It just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
It sounds like the book you recommended, right? A billion wicked thoughts.
A billion wicked
God,
thoughts. That book is so good.
But,
for anybody that has a strong stomach.
When you hear moral flexibility, you have the same reaction, right? Oh, that sounds horrible, but it sounds so good. So moral flexibility is essentially the idea that you can you can shift your ethics and your morals around some other objective, right? If you don't have that, if you have strict morals and strict ethics, you're not going to do well in clandestine operations. You're just not. You have to have flexibility to say.
What becomes your guidepost? Is it protecting Americans?
Yes. It becomes, honestly, as again, this is where people don't like CIA. CIA's mission is American primacy. That's it, right? That's the goal. It goes
I'm a child of the 80s. I love American primacy. I love it the most. I know that's so out of fashion right now.
It is out of fashion.
I think it's crazy. Everybody should want primacy for their own country.
They absolutely should. And if you're an American, the fact that we have the freest country in the world, do we have problems? Yes. Are our problems anywhere like other countries' problems? No.
Spoken by somebody who's been in other countries.
It's nuts, man. It's incredible how people lose perspective. They never gain perspective. They're trapped in their own perception about how bad America is.
Right.
America's messed up. I'm not saying it's not. We're an adolescent country. In the developmental stages of a country, we're just over 250 years old. I think we're just under 250 years old. We're freaking adolescents. We're teenagers. Of course we're all fucked up, right? What teenager do you know that has it all figured out? We've got growing to do, but let's not negate the progress that we've made just because we're not where we want to be yet, right? But either way, moral flexibility is this idea that you can change your personal ethics to fit a larger goal. Ours is American primacy. CIA believes, and the government of the United States believes, that as long as America is the strongest country in the world is a safer place to Americans. If you don't like the way that sounds, then you don't want to work in the government, right? We're not worried about the security of Nigerians. We're not worried about the security of Australians. We're not worried about the freedom of human rights in, Sri Lanka. That's not our first goal. It might be somewhere at like goal 75. Right. Goal number 1, keep Americans safe, give Americans every opportunity to succeed in a world that's dominated by the United States.
It's going to be dominated by somebody.
It's going to be dominated by somebody. Exactly right. So this idea of moral flexibility is a big part of what CIA recruits us to do. They recruit us because we have moral flexibility to make that American primacy mission happen. And then they also teach us that when you are engaging with somebody, a target, and that target has potential value to the mission, sometimes you have to veer from your own ethics about dealing with people to meet them where they are so that you can get into their private and secret life and guide them to where you need them to be.
Did that mess with your head, or do you find that easy?
I found it thrilling. I wouldn't say I found it easy. There's a learning curve there, but it was absolutely thrilling. It's like you said, something you enjoy doing, right? Something that brings you excitement. Learning how to manage people, like manage them on, I say manage. We learned how to manipulate people. That's what CIA taught us how to do. We weren't making friends with these folks, right? You're finding the most powerful, most vulnerable people in the world who have access to secrets that keep Americans safe. That's not a big population. There's really only a small population that has that level of access, that level of secret access, right? You had to find them. You had to befriend them. You had to get into their secret life. You had to get them to commit the safety of themselves and their family to you. And then eventually your real goal is to institutionalize them so that you can basically leave and a junior officer can step in to maintain that relationship.
Do you reveal who you are at some point?
Sometimes. Sometimes you reveal who you are. Sometimes it's better to leave what we call a fig leaf, where they think they know who you are, but they're never really sure. Because if they were sure, they might self-destruct. Right. That's another thing, another predictable human thing. Human beings like to self-destruct. We like to self-destruct.
What?
Yeah, we all carry this self-destruct button on our chest. It's what we say, right? A big red self-destruct button. So When we start to get ourselves into trouble, you start to lie, and then you tell compounding lies because you're trying to get yourself out of the situation that you got yourself into. Inevitably, you're going to land on a point where you're like, I just need to come clean.
Whoa.
That's something that we do, right? And then you've got the people out there who refuse to lie because they're so afraid of that moment that they only tell the truth.
Yeah.
Well, when you only tell the truth, guess what you do?
Whoa. I'm evaluating myself internally like crazy right now. So keep going.
So
Why do we like to self-destruct?
we like to self-destruct because we in our brains we create this low probability outcome where all will be forgiven and we'll be able to reset. What we don't like, people can reinvent. You can always reinvent. You can never reset. This isn't freaking Nintendo, right? There's no hitting select or start and starting all over again. You just don't get to do that. You got to finish the game. And then you can restart, you can reinvent, you can recreate, but you can't go backwards. You can't reset.
So true.
We keep thinking that we can reset. We keep thinking that we can go back to the blank slate that you already said never actually existed. We can't. We have to keep playing the game. You can retreat or you can advance, but you can't restart the war. You're in it. You're in it and you've only got one chance. You've only got one ride on this rock that circles in one direction, right? Time only goes one way until we find out how to do it otherwise. This is just where we are. You've got to accept that reality. You can't perceive something different. You have to accept the reality that you're going where you're going. Two things happen when you accept that reality. The first thing is that you learn that everything that's happened that you would think that your instinct tells you to just reset and start over, just whitewash it all, reformat the disk, and let's start over again.
So we like to self-destruct because we are misinterpreting the moment.
Right. Because we are telling ourselves a lie in our head, right? We're telling ourselves that it's better to start over than to start where we are.
Wow.
It's never better to start over. You are a fantastic example because you accept it. You are the sum total of all of your experiences, good and bad. You are 0 to 7, 7 to 13, 13 to whatever age you are now. You are all of that sum of all of that experience and all of your learning. You use the mantra, don't forget who you are, or remember who you are. Is that what you say? Remember who I am. What you're really remembering is everything that brought you to where you are. You can't pick and choose. You can't reset it. That is what it is. And it's a fucking superpower. But it's a superpower for everybody. It's a superpower for everybody. I'm nowhere near the financial success that you are. I'm nowhere near the achievement that you've achieved. I'm nowhere near the notoriety that you have. Nowhere near it. But you still invited me to come here. There's something I offer of value that made this conversation interesting and relevant to you. We all have that kind of power, what we call wasta. Wasta is the Arabic word for influence, right? We all have that kind of wasta. We just have to learn to lean into the wasta that we have and leverage it to achieve what we're trying to achieve, to build what we're trying to build. We can't just reset it and start over. We spend so much time, people spend so much time bemoaning their background instead of leveraging it into something amazing, turning it into something productive, right? And what ends up happening is the reason espionage works, the reason business works, is because human beings, laughably predictable human beings, are always unhappy. Edgar Allan Poe said people are never truly happy until they're unhappy. Because you're unhappy, as soon as something makes you happy, you start to worry about when that happiness is going to be taken away by something that makes you unhappy. So you can never actually reach happiness. Your average person is happy as long as they're unhappy, because that's when they're content. They believe, well, everything's miserable. It can't really get worse than this.
That's so weird.
So when in espionage, you're looking for those people. You're always looking for the person who has access to secrets, because once you find the few people who have access to secrets, there's a high probability they're miserable, because everybody's fucking miserable. So then all you have to do is use the skills to get into this miserable person's secret life and make them think that you're doing it because you care about them as a person, when in fact you just care about their access, because what you really are after is American primacy. And then once you get that person to trust you because they bring you into your secret life, you just drain their secrets, feed it back to American legislators, and you prepare this person to be turned over to a new person that they never even let into their secret life in the first place. But now you vouch, what we call advocate, you advocate for this new person who's coming in, which means your trust and your credibility in their secret life is automatically carried on to the person that you introduce them to. They are now what we call institutionalized assets. They don't even realize that their loyalty is not to Tom and Andy. Their loyalty is to CIA, and they don't even realize it.
All while keeping their hand off the self-destruct button.
And because you're keeping their hand off the self-destruct button, because remember how I was telling you sometimes we leave them a fig leaf? I'm sorry, I'm just rolling here, man. If I'm cutting you off, interrupt me anytime.
No, this is amazing.
When a spy realizes, oh shit, I'm giving away secrets, what they think to themselves is, I need to go self-report. I need to go tell my boss. I need to go tell the police. I need to go tell something, because if I'm caught, especially in the countries that we steal secrets from, if I'm caught, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill my wife. They're going to kill my kids. They're going to kill my parents. They're going to make us all a public spectacle to make sure that nobody ever does this again. So they're stuck between a true rock and a hard place, because they think to themselves, if I self-admit what I'm doing, I might get killed. If I get caught doing what I'm doing, I might get killed. So the self-destruct button they have is to pull away from you, to like go into hiding, and then potentially to leak it at some point in the future. So then you lose access to them immediately. 2 years down the road, they still self-destruct. They still tell somebody, man, this one time I was talking to an American and I accidentally gave him like the codes to our nukes. And I realized that maybe I shouldn't trust him. And then somebody reports them anyways, and families get killed. Jesus. We have to protect them from their own natural instinct. So a big part of why we continue to meet with our assets is so that we can constantly cultivate and train them to resist that urge, right? There's no resetting.
How do you get them to resist that urge? What you're doing is good.
Yes.
I care about you.
Positive reinforcement. What you're doing. Nobody spies for the reason they think they spy. Just like you were saying, people don't want to know about business. People don't want to learn what they need to learn. They want to learn what they want to learn. I'm totally massacring your own quote. Right. But people don't spy for the reasons they think they spy. People spy for what's known as a core motivation, right? We call it a core motivation. And there's only 4 core motivations. And they fall into a acronym that we call RICE, R-I-C-E. Rewards is a core motivator. Ideology is a core motivator. Coercion is a core motivator. And ego is a core motivator.
There we go.
Those are it. That's all you got.
Wow.
Every human being is driven in every decision by those 4 things.
Oh, dude, I love these rubrics. These are fantastic.
So when you recruit somebody, when you create a spy, it's all based in one of those 4 areas. You just have to know which of those 4 areas is most relevant to that person. And you'll know which of those 4 areas based on what you know about their 3 stages of life. So this person is ideologically driven. This person is ego driven. This person is reward driven. This person won't do something unless you hold a gun to their face. You just know it, right? And then you test it over time. So when you are managing and handling a human asset, they're a human being. They think that they're giving you secrets because you're their friend. They think that they're in some kind of trusting relationship. Now, maybe you're their friend who also pays them. Maybe you're their friend who encourages them to believe in the power of democracy, and they're in a communist country. Who knows, right? So you're feeding them whatever their core motivation is. But you're also inside their secret life. So you've got the loyalty piece covered. The human response to loyalty, right? The human response to being in someone's secret life is that loyalty, that fealty. You've got that, but you're also feeding them on an incentive basis by hitting their core motivation. So that's the magic 1-2 punch. So that's how you keep someone resourced and charged so that they don't ever press the button that's waiting for them. That self-destruct button is always there. It just takes one bad day, one bad decision, one moment of weakness to press it. That's all you got to do is prevent people from doing that.
Do they believe if they press that button that they'll get more lenient treatment?
Yes. You believe that too, man. You've had that conversation in your own head where you're like, if I just come clean, if I just admit the truth, if I just share whatever, right? Then it'll be less bad than if I don't.
There must be something true-ish about that. Do people actually, like, I'm trying to put this on the scale of like, they're going to kill my family, everyone I know and love. Like, that's so heavy, man. And humans can be gnarly in the extreme. Do they actually get letter treatment? Or is this like a fool's errand?
It's a fool's errand. It's when you're in a place where that's the risk, you've got it. Like, you have to look at everything through a lens of cultural norms, right? In a country where it's a norm to make a public statement through the mass execution of a family line, which is, that's a country where family name carries a lot of weight. Asian families, family names in Asia carry an incredible amount of weight. Japan, we were just talking, what is Japan all about? Honoring what?
Ancestors.
Everything. So to bring dishonor to the family name is such a heavy thing that the self-destruct button those people might press is execution, is just suicide. Whoa. You know what happens if your asset kills themselves? They stay secure, but you lose a source of information. So you can't let that happen, right? There's lots of different versions of a self-destruct button. The trick is, the mission is to make sure that they never think that self-destruct is the best option. It's always an option. They always remember that it's an option, right? I certainly went through a phase in my life where I was thinking dark, suicidal thoughts.
Really?
Many people do.
In CIA
in that 13 to 25-year-old pubescent Andy, there was absolutely like dark nail polish, like I don't like my stepdad, my mom doesn't pay attention, my sisters are the favorites, I was running into racial issues at school. Like, there's all sorts of stuff there, and you certainly have those thoughts where you're like, what's the fucking point? Like, is this really worth? No one's even gonna miss me, right? Like, the amount of people who have had those thoughts is surprisingly large. It doesn't mean we take action on it, right? It's an option, right? It's not really a reset. It's not. You're not starting all over again. You're just ending what you have.
When people are thinking about smashing the self-destruct button, is it normally to confess, or do people kill themselves?
It's normally to confess. Confession is again, this makes me sound like just an incredibly horrible person. Confession is the worst of the two options from the point of view of an intelligence officer. Because if someone confesses, then they're no longer providing access to information. But they're also potentially admitting that you were the one handling them. So now that brings a whole world of pain on you. Plus, if someone starts to investigate you, then how long before they start to take apart the network that supported you in that country or in the field, right? Now all of a sudden there's like secondary and tertiary levels of risk exposure. So confession is our worst case scenario. We would rather an asset self-destruct or just go dark. Go dark meaning they just shut themselves off from the world. And I mean, it's still scary if they shut themselves off from the world because you don't know who they're telling what to. But we can control suicide, the blowback from suicide. We can't really control the blowback from somebody who confesses.
Oof. Do agents, and I don't know if this is something that you can talk about, but when that happens, like the person goes dark, do agents like get me out of here? Like, is it extraction time?
Usually it's extraction time, is what we would call a non-emergency extraction. An emergency extraction is like, no shit, black airplanes are going into the sky with boxes that have oxygen tanks, and you're like getting extracted, right? We think that your threat to life or threat to survival is imminent. So we need you out ASAP, right? We don't have time to tell Borders and Custom that you're going to be leaving. We don't have time to tell anybody. We're just getting you out. That's an emergency exfiltration. When we have a non-emergency evacuation or a non-emergency exfiltration, then you can go through the established lines. It's a race against the clock, because the question becomes, can you get across the border faster than the person who went dark can turn themselves in, submit your name, and the bureaucracy of the local police force can get your name to the border crossing agents, right? And sometimes, I mean, if someone goes dark, if someone goes dark and you've in 12 hours or less, you can get yourself across the border, you're safe, right? Sometimes it can be 3 days, sometimes it can be 2 weeks, and sometimes you're on a mission that's so sensitive that it's actually better to wait until you see signs that people are coming for you and then trigger the emergency exfil.
Whoa.
Right?
So let's say that moment happens. Do you have like booby traps or something that you set on the door? I mean, this is like straight up movie stuff. Are you like papering the door, and if it falls out, you know somebody's been in? Like, what signs do you look for that somebody's coming after you?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick to the unclassified version.
Of course.
So generally speaking, when you think that you're under scrutiny, what we call scrutiny or advanced scrutiny, you are looking first for some sort of active surveillance, because
the dude who lingers too long outside your apartment.
If they're what we would call a bumbling surveillant, then yes, bumbling surveillance exists, right? There's different levels of surveillance. So let's reverse engineer. You've got an asset. The asset knows that you are getting their secrets. Asset turns you in. Well, now the question for the local police force or the local intelligence service is, do we wrap up the person that we know is collecting secrets, or do we observe the person who's collecting secrets to see who else are they collecting secrets from, and who else are they meeting with to report their secrets to? Because now you have the opportunity to unfold an entire network. It's a very similar problem to what the police have. Do you take out one drug dealer, or do you follow the drug dealer to find, the larger kingpin? So the first thing that we do when we suspect that we might be under scrutiny is amp up our situational awareness to observe whether or not we think we're being observed. So yes, bumbling surveillance would be a potential that you're being observed. Usually bumbling surveillance exists naturally. Like, there are countries where you just being a tall, wealthy white guy, as soon as you walk into that country, there's going to be some bumbling person who's always like 17 feet behind you with a newspaper walking around, just keeping an eye on you, right? For any number of reasons. We would expect to see more refined, sophisticated surveillance. So we would look for a team. We're trained to see teams of surveillance, foot surveillance, vehicle surveillance. We're trained to know when and how to look for closed television, closed circuit TV, and or aerial drones. We know when we can spot them at the right time to confirm if they're after us, right? And if we see sophisticated surveillance, then we can trigger the next step. So that's one way that we would go about doing it. The other thing we would look for is electronic signatures that we're being electronically surveilled. There's certain signatures, there are certain behaviors that you can look for in your cell phone, in your computer, in your laptop, in your smart TV, on your smart devices. There's certain things that you can keep an eye out for that demonstrate that you might be tapped or you might be under.
Are any of those
watch.
unclassified that you can tell me about?
I'm pretty sure that it's unclassified to talk about gaps, like delays. If you start to see performance delays in a device that is performing normally, that's a good sign that it's got an additional drag on its internal CPU or its internal memory.
I'm going to
unit.
be so paranoid now.
So if your smartwatch is always working, and then all of a sudden your smartwatch has this delay, it's not catching the right time, it's not connecting to the Wi-Fi, it's got some kind of gap, some sort of digital gap, right? That's usually a sign that something in the internal unit is draining it of its processing power. When a hack happens, when an information or a data hack happens, they're not usually very clean and they're not efficient. So they are very energy intensive. So for your watch or for your phone or for your smart TV to be sending your signal out to another location all the time, right, is going to constantly fill up. It's going to take all the demand on your RAM that's being carried in your smart device. So when you see that, it's an indicator. Does that mean you run and hide? Not necessarily. It's just an indicator. Oftentimes we find indicators as very comfortable things, because if there's an indicator that we're being surveilled, then that means it's not an indicator that as soon as we step outside, we're going to get wrapped up into a van. Now we have time. We have time to get off the X as long as we don't fucking melt down.
Right.
Right. So And that's the big thing too. When you see surveillance on your smartwatch or surveillance on your smartphone, your smart TV starts to jigger. And then you also see surveillance on the street. Guess what every fiber in your body wants you to do? Run and hit that self-destruct button, right? Just run. I'm out of here as fast as I can. Maybe if I get on a tuk-tuk and it takes me to a local airport and I pay some local pilot $300, he'll just fly me to Cambodia. Maybe. No, it's not going to work that way. You're going to get intercepted 15 minutes after you start the run. Like the way the human brain can rationalize through a dangerous situation and come to the wrong conclusion, it's incredible.
If you like that clip, check out the full powerful episode here, and I'll see you there.